Hi muckers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing very well. Okay, today's video has been highly requested. Don't worry, I have seen all of the DMs. But basically, yeah, this has just came out a couple days ago and people are really intrigued for us to kind of have a conversation about it, and I'm always down for that. And this is from a creator, Isaac Rothschild, and I like the concept of this. The podcasty kind of vibe that he's going for is he brings guests on and they confront a topic right on, and I like the concept of that. So he's brought on Brooke Schofield, and they immediately are just diving into talking about Brooke Schofield's tweets from 2013 that resurfaced again. If you remember her racist tweets, we went through them, we talked about them, and I think it's important to continue talking about whenever a creator has posted things like this until they take full accountability. And again, I'm aware that full accountability looks different for a lot of people. And I think for Brooke going on this podcast where she is, going to address everything front on and there's nothing else discussed, I think is a great move, if I'm being completely honest with you. And at the start of the episode, the guy, openly says, like, we want to talk about these things front on. We want to know, if people can change. We want to hear from these people. And I think that that's a really great way of having a conversation and being open about the possibility of change and what does that look like for people. And yeah, let's dive into it. Also, my Finsta is normally on private, but I do currently have it on public. There's a lot of mess that goes on over there. Again, it normally is on private, but for today, it is on public. So if you go to Instagram, it's McIntyre's Dump, and again, it's a lot of mess over there. It's a lot of fun. Normally, it's on private. It's on public right now, so come over and follow. This is your time to join. And yeah, let's get into this. So it's called Brooke Schofield, I Was Wrong About Those Tweets, episode 5 from Isaac Rothschild, and I will link this entire video down below. Please go and support it. We are watching it to give commentary and to react because, again, we have covered everything from when these tweets resurfaced, to the backlash from it, to Brooke acknowledging it, and now Brooke really sitting down and talking about it. So again, this video will be linked down below. Go send Isaac some love. Go support the channel. And yeah, let's watch it, okay?
I have a bunch of scripted questions. It's more conversational. This will be the only scripted, waste no time, let's get right into it question. You ready?
Probably. I don't know. I'm nervous.
No, it's not that intense. Okay. Waste no time. Do you think people can change?
Yes.
Tell me more.
I feel like I've been like 20 people in the last year. I don't know. I'm also just somebody who, like, my mind changes so often that it's like who I was even just in my last relationship or a year ago, how I thought everything I believed in, like, was so different that, like, yes, absolutely. I think people change so constantly that I can't imagine anyone feels like you can't.
Yeah, I get annoyed because, like, sometimes people don't give people space to change. And I think that's what's so important. It's just like, let somebody change because it's what makes people special. I want to start the conversation with...
I love the name of this as well. Look, don't worry, I'll ask. I think this is genius.
Just like your upbringing, because you're from Arizona.
Yes.
What part of Arizona are you from?
So I was born in Tucson. I spent like the first 10 years of my life in Tucson, and then I was in Phoenix for most of the rest.
Just tell me about that, because like when you think of Arizona and like where you're from, are you thinking Phoenix? Are you going straight to Phoenix and that's like your...
Yes.
Like that's where I'm from?
I go to Phoenix because like I would like to look at that as like my more important portion of my life. Tucson was like just dark.
Baby, I went to Phoenix and did a show there. I don't know how y'all deal with that heat. That is miserable. You know where else is like that? Houston. You know where else is like that? Actually, I was going to say Orlando, but I actually really did enjoy the temperature in Orlando. Still, I don't know in how many of these places, the dry heat, the humidity, it is not for me. Get me back to Ireland, babe.
So Tucson was like the first 10 years, like I said, and that was my time that I spent with my parents. And then the rest of my life was spent with my grandparents in Phoenix. And so I like to look at that and be like, that was my bulk.
And like you talked about your upbringing, again, like forward thinking, getting better. And like you mentioned the struggle of Tucson with like your parents. And we had people submit questions. And one of the questions was just about like how you view your parents in that time period. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to kind of pause and just like leave it open. Like when you say, oh, it was like a struggle, and I think back and it was like, it's like dark. Just tell me more about that.
So I grew up primarily with my mom. My dad was like in and out, but it was mostly my mom, my sister, and I. And my mom's an addict, always has been an addict since as long as I can remember. So that was just like, pretty much it framed like the entire way that I grew up until I moved in with my grandparents. It was just dark. Obviously, growing up with an addict is hard in general, but my dad would come in and out. All of her relationships were very abusive and violent. So it's like, when I think about that time, it's very much like, it's just dark to think about in general, yeah.
even like you talking about it, it feels dark because like my upbringing was not like that. It was more like steady, stable. I don't know. People look at like kids and they're like, oh, they don't really know what's going on, right? Like, I guess what age did you live with your grandparents?
I moved in with them, I think, when I was 10. So
I think I really like the acknowledgement of that from him as well, which is, you know, people don't talk about like how much childhood really does affect people, and I think we're probably like the first generation that really do acknowledge it, because again, people kind of have this perspective, and they have, and I guess it's, you know, like a decades old thing where, you know, kids are stupid and kids are dumb, and I think we're only really starting to have conversations that, you know, kids, young people really are a sponge to their surrounding and really do pick up on what they're being, you know, influenced by or hearing. And I hear this concept all the time from my friends who have divorced parents. And I know this is like different to what's being talked about here with like an addict mother and, you know, a father who's coming in and out. But like there's many times where me and my friends will have conversations with, you know, the fact that their parents are divorced and that they have a better relationship with their parents now as an adult, because whenever they were a kid, like the parents really didn't take honesty seriously when it came to talking to the kids about the divorce. And one of my friends in particular as well, like, she wouldn't mind me saying this because she's very open about it, but she talks about the fact that her upbringing was really bad when it came to the divorce, and that she kind of experienced and heard and witnessed a lot, and that it was only in recent years, you know, she was open with both of her parents that she has a great relationship now, and the parents have a great relationship now, better than when they were together, about truly how much of that she picked up and heard and listened to. And again, as kids, you're aware of what's going on as well, but you will go out of your way to try figure things out. Kids are not stupid and are not dumb in any capacity, and I think it's always great to have a conversation on terms of like what the impact your childhood had on you moving forward into adulthood, because it's important. And again, our generations never spoke about that because kids are dumb and kids are young, but that's not the truth at all.
I had 9 or 10, I want to say, but I definitely had an idea of what was going on. My sister was with me. She's 5 years older than me, so there was a lot of her kind of explaining to me what was going on. And also, like, you know, I feel like very like specific memories obviously like frame you forever. I'm weird. I feel like sometimes talking about it because I really don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's challenging. And I was going to ask you, like, a lot of influencers have like come out and talked about going to therapy and like just like working through some of these things, not to the extent that you're talking about, but like, have you done that just to like work through that part of your life?
No, never. I've been in therapy, but it's always been for like whatever I'm going through at that like particular time. I definitely should probably at some point really process all of that, but I struggle a little bit too. Just like I'm saying, I don't talk about it often for that reason, because I'm like, I don't want to relive it.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many people over the course of my life have been like, you would never believe that that's where you came from and stuff. And I latched onto that so heavily. I was like, oh, like, I really appreciate that. And so I've kind of convinced myself over time, like, that had no impact on like who I was. And obviously I found out in later life, like, that's just not true. I don't know. So much of my life has been like pretending that's like not a factor. So I kind of feel like I still lean into that sometimes. I'm like, no, like, it didn't have an effect on me. But yeah, I just generally, like, I feel imposter syndrome very much. So like, I don't deserve this. I wanted it, and I so appreciate having everything that I have, but I definitely have an aspect of like, I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve it. Yeah,
I love that though. Like, it's just humility, right? And you definitely give that, by the way. Like, your energy is very humble. Like, I'm sure like you guys all feel that too. It's like immediate.
Thank you.
So Tucson to Phoenix, you go in, you move in with your grandparents. What was that like having like a fresh situation, you know, moving, whole life changed?
It was so amazing. It was honestly so amazing. My grandparents are just, first of all, they're like my heroes. They're the best people in the world. And because of the situation that I was in, even like just moving in with them in general, I was like, I felt like rescued in a way.
Yeah.
And so to me, they hung the moon. And after, like, from that point forward, we still like struggled. The time that I moved in with them was, I think, 2007. So that was like the market crash. So it's like I went from, you know, being with my parents, addicts, very, very poor, moving with my grandparents. I'm like, oh, perfect. And then market crashes and now we're poor again. But just the difference in like the support that I felt like I had and how I feel like they paid attention to me and were so much more invested in me that I look back and I'm like.
Also, a big thing, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I read a book recently about like childhood trauma and childhood, like, I can't remember. When I find the name of it, I'll tell you, because it was a really great read. I read it in this summer of 2023. And the book basically kind of focused on the concept of like how important it is to be seen in general, or feel seen or feel heard, and how specifically important that is when you're a kid. And this narrative again of like, kids are dumb, kids are just kids. And I think as well, I don't think I'll ever have kids. I feel that's a very general statement that a lot of people my age feel. It feels very impossible. I mean, with the economy, it feels impossible with just the way the world's going. I think we're a lot more realistic about like life journey timelines and stuff like that. And I actually saw something last night that was talking about how, you know, 25 is the new 21. You know, we kind of as a generation are made to feel a little bit bad because, oh, by this age, we haven't done what our parents have done. They're married, they have kids, they have a house. But again, with the way the economy in the world works now, the timelines are not as accurate as what they were for our parents or our grandparents or whatever, right? So we kind of prioritize different things now. And a big thing for my generation is prioritizing not having kids because it's not that realistic. Like, why are we going to have kids when we can't afford a house? Why are we going to have kids when rent is going up? But like, you know, can't afford food for ourselves. But I think that if I ever did have kids, one thing the book really taught me was kind of the importance of treating, you know, kids like real people. And one of the main ways it talked about was how this person who wrote the book talked about how they talk to their kid as not an adult, but they don't talk to their kid like, you know, like a little kid and dumbing things down. And it talked about the importance that had on the fundamental growth of their kid. And I really thought about it because I saw a TikTok a couple days ago where this woman was like telling her kid off, but she was talking to the kid like an adult. She wasn't like babying the kid or whatever. And the kid immediately did what she wanted because it was this level of being seen and respect, even if it was a kid, you know. I don't know. I just think it's really, really, really important.
Like,
it's a huge undertaking to bring somebody into your house, like, or like having a kid literally in our situation. Like, for them to sacrifice that is crazy. And I'm sure your sister, it's just you and your sister?
Yeah, so my sister and I, we both, at the time that I moved in, I didn't know I was moving in with them. I thought, I think my mom, she either went to rehab or jail. It's hard, honestly, to even remember. But we thought we were going like for the weekend. And it just like progressively got longer and longer. And it came to time that like I was supposed to enroll in school. So they enrolled me in school and I never went home. But my sister, she's 5 years older than me, was a little bit more like unmanageable. She was older, and like the situation that we were in like affected her obviously a lot more because she was older, and she was it was her really formative years that were affected by it. So she had like major behavioral issues. She was a hard kid to deal with. And my grandparents, I feel like, were very overwhelmed by it. And so she ended up going back to Tucson. Wow. So it was just me with my grandparents.
So you're in Phoenix, and like, who were your grandparents? Just walk me through your upbringing with them and like how you feel like they raised you.
I feel like just like specifically they were so unbelievably like supportive of me. And I feel like they just, like I told you before, like they gave me so much attention that I didn't have before. And just in general, they're very, very amazing people. Just very like empathetic and just generous. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's not like a casual thing to just bring in a child. I don't think they had like a full understanding of what was going to happen when I moved in with them, but they never made me feel like I was a burden. They never, you know, like acted like it was this huge undertaking. And I was very, very grateful for that. So to me, they like hung the moon.
Yeah, for sure. And then do you still have a relationship with them?
Yes, I have. Well, my grandpa's like, he's the most amazing person in the world. My grandma, she has dementia. So we lost her kind of.
Wow, that's super difficult. And I know a lot of people deal with that. Well, let's move on, because it's like you, Phoenix, grew up, and then you moved to LA to pursue acting.
Yeah.
Like,
hilarious.
Why do you think it's hilarious? Because now you're not like in the acting world?
Well, just because.
I think, speaking of that, like the moving to LA for acting to like influencer pipeline, I'm currently reacting to Escape the Night, Joey Graceffa's show on my Patreon. And I said the acting is so funny on the shows because it literally is like people that moved to LA to be actors but ended up having to become YouTubers, and now they're living their fantasy of like acting in something.
Because I made no effort in that regard at all. I came here.
It sounds cool though. It sounds great.
But it was like, it was so, I mean, I'd always like, of course I dreamt of like doing something like that. I wanted to be in LA. I wanted to like live a Hollywood lifestyle. Every little kid does, you know, but I laugh about it now because it's like, I didn't audition for one thing. I'm not exaggerating.
No.
Not once.
Which is actually wild. You're like, I'm pursuing acting, and people are like...
You know who was doing auditions for movies and TV shows every weekend as a kid? Me.
You literally don't act.
Well, it takes a lot. It really does take a lot because you can't support yourself out here like just acting. You know what I mean? Especially if you've never done it before. So you have to have a job. And to survive here, you have to work so constantly that it's like, when do you even have time? And people find the time. People who are passionate about it. I didn't find the time.
I think it's actually so funny that we had acting in the notes because you're like, I couldn't be any less of an actor.
Never once did I. Like, I wanted to so bad. And still today, I'm like, God, I would love to do that. But
give me your like dream movie that you would be like, I could have been in that.
Ooh, well, it's so funny because like my dream movie, I always say Greatest Showman because that's what like
Greatest Showman?
The Greatest Showman has Hugh Jackman.
The Greatest Showman is, by the way, the most wonderful movie to watch. I think The Greatest Showman and Flushed Away are top tier movie for watching high. I went to the dispensary yesterday and I got these new gummies. Well, they're actually not gummies. They're like chocolates. Hold on, let me show you. First of all, they smell delicious. Smell so... I can pop one of these bitches right now. However, I got them because I was like, oh, like I've been doing a lot recently and I just really wanted a night to chill. And it's so funny she's saying The Greatest Showman because a couple of years ago I watched it really high and I was like, there's nothing more that I want to do than that tonight. So if anyone else has any other recommendations for like movies that are great to watch high, please let me know down below.
Should I know that?
It's a musical. And I saw it so many times in theaters that is genuinely what brought me out here. Like, I was so passionate about it.
What did it look like? You're like, I don't act. Probably not going to, but I'm going to
I think it was so exciting to me. And I was like, oh my God. Like, it for some reason just made me feel like...
Soundtrack of that movie, by the way, top fucking tier.
My life needs to be bigger than this and I gotta go. And I went.
Oh my God.
But...
the concept of watching The Greatest Showman and being like, wow, I need that and I need to move to LA is crazy.
I would not have been good in that movie. I just would have wanted to be in that movie. Truly, I would love it.
It's so funny though, because like you've talked about this just in everything you've dealt with, like how your grandparents maybe were more conservative, your environment was more conservative. And then you come to LA, like I'm sure there was like a drastic cultural shift when you went from conservative Phoenix in your bubble to like here where like anything goes.
For sure. Arizona in general is just, it's very conservative. I can't think.
Very conservative.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone who I grew up with who wasn't like a very conservative family or whatever it is. So it was, like you said, it was very different for me to come here. Like my best friend when I moved here, like initially I got here, she's trans. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh my God, I cannot, like completely changed my perspective on everything. Cause I'm like, wait, maybe what I've, heard and listened to all this time is just completely wrong.
God, isn't that the best feeling though?
It is. It's a strange feeling. Like, I mean, it's awful in a sense. Cause you're like, you look at the people who you admire and look up to so much and you're like, wait, maybe they don't know everything.
Yeah. Well, and I'll meet you where you're at here. So like I grew up in deep South, conservative Southern Baptist Georgia.
Wow.
So like
my family's Southern Baptist too. My grandparents or my great grandparents.
So you get this to a T. I was going to ask you if they were religious too. But like, I mean, my whole upbringing, I was taught, I'm not even gonna say I believe this. I was just taught that like gay people are going to hell. Like, I mean, really we were taught that like black people shouldn't date white people. Like just all these oh my God. We used to have families like prom, you take prom pictures. Like we would have families that would refuse to take pictures with interracial couples. Like that was my high school upbringing.
Yeah, it was definitely not my experience. I think specifically because like I didn't grow up in like a primarily white family in general. So I feel like I didn't experience as much of that. But I did just generally like gay people, trans people. I feel like the views on that especially were like
radical.
Just a little, not what I would believe now.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the question I asked. Like, do you believe people can change? Like, they can. I mean, when you're young, and we'll get into like everything that you dealt with changing very specifically. But when you're young, like you are just a product of your environment. Like you're literally just a sponge for whatever you hear.
I said
and again,
that earlier,
it's not even that you believe it. You're just like projecting what's told.
It's what you're consuming for sure. And especially like me, I looked up to people so much that it's like, you can't imagine that the people that you love and like you look up to so much could possibly be wrong. Or not even like just have a different understanding than you might in the future. And I feel like I was consuming so much of like a very one-sided view of the world.
Super one-sided, yeah. It's like earth-shattering or like world-shattering. Not in like a bad way, but just like, yeah, you're right. Like you go to these different environments and you're like, wait, that was not true at all.
I think that's also such an interesting point of like having to acknowledge that the people that you're influenced by or that you love so much or they're the ones that you love and are everything to you are wrong or are fundamentally incredibly ignorant or arrogant or incredibly radical, and having to unlearn that and what that does to your relationship. Like I can't imagine what that's like if that was your entire influence.
I mean, I think back to my upbringing and I'm like, my parents did a great job. I mean, I'm in a mixed household, like dad's black, white, mom's white. So like naturally I had a lot of ideologies. So point being, you came here, had this moment where you're like, everything's different. How do you feel like that shifted your mindset moving forward in your interactions, your conversations with grandparents or people back home? How did it just change everything?
Yeah, it just gave me an incentive to like start to think for myself, because like I said, like my best friend being trans was like a major like influence on my life, because like prior to then I had no experience really with anybody who was transgender. Like I never had spent time like or really gotten to know anybody who was transgender. So I loved her so much and she was my best friend, and I couldn't imagine that anybody like thought that she wasn't a woman or like,
Yeah.
and I understood like for the most part, conservative people don't really prioritize trans people or their rights or anything. So that was the first time where I was like, hold on, like this isn't right.
It is crazy because people like refusing to call them by proper pronouns, or like, it's like they're not even human. And you probably thought, not saying, I don't want to just like throw this ideology on you, but your circles thought that growing up.
My grandparents in particular, like they weren't shove it down your throat. They're not very political in general, but like just what I was consuming at that time, my parents a little more so, which is ironic just because they have no business truly like being political at all. But what I heard a lot was like, you know, Rush Limbaugh or like Sean Hannity, like talk radio that was so...
It's on repeat.
Yeah, it was constantly playing, and it was what I was consuming, and it was so biased and so one-sided that I feel like that was like my understanding of what was going on. So no one in my family was like shoving it down my throat like, oh, trans people aren't real.
Yeah,
but
it was just always, you know, it's just
I heard about it. And of course...
Again, I guess a product of your lifestyle and what you're consuming, you know what I mean? Like, what does that mean when the only people you're surrounded by do not acknowledge, you know, specific ideologies or specific people existing even, and then the only media that you're allowed to consume is incredibly, incredibly radical media?
I went to college too, and in college, even a little bit, I was like, I started having friends. Like,
where'd you go to school?
U of A.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, that was like, of course, I started thinking for myself a little bit more in college, as you do.
Oh yeah, it changes things real fast.
Also college in general, and my major was public health. So that's a very, very liberal major because it deals with so many like issues that are more like liberal people care more about.
Yeah. Here's what's interesting to me though with you. You have this you had this major shift, right? Like I'm sure you felt like a very different person in the way you think. And like this is like a new age of you and you're learning every day. But like you still have to like continue to talk to people that maybe don't think the same way that you do. Like how often did you talk to your parents?
So I would come like specifically, I know I keep referencing Lila's her name, my trans friend, but I would go home and I would talk about her and it would frustrate me because I'm trying to like get across like, you don't understand, like she is a woman. Like she is a woman and like nobody's arguing with me at home. Like that's not the vibe. It was just very like, it's frustrating to me like knowing especially like they were supporting people who like don't care if that girl has a life. You know what I mean?
Literally,
so
if she's living, they don't care.
And so it was frustrating. And like I said, I never came from it wasn't like anyone was encouraging me to believe certain things. I think I just I like parroted, like I wanted to appear to know things. So I listened and I just fucking.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm purposely kind of like setting the stage here because we're obviously going to talk about everything that you dealt with. But again, like self-exploration, forward thinking, growth, like all things that are super important. And you dealt with people assuming that you didn't go through that process later on in your life. But before we get into that, canceled podcast, like when did that enter the chat, as they say?
I think it was 2021 or maybe 2022 that we started canceled. Or Canna started canceled.
Also, it's so funny as well because in the midst of the conversations of the cancel podcast being, you know, canceled, and it being no longer, I went back and looked at the original days of cancel because I never really consumed it until the later years. And if anything, I really didn't pay much attention to the cancel podcast until the Clinton Kane drama as well, which is crazy because that was right before all this happened with Brooke and the tweets and stuff. But I went back to those OG days and I completely forgot that like Brooke was Mindy in Tana's story time. Tana made a story time about, you know, this ex-friend of hers like sleeping with her boyfriend or something like that, and made a story time about how this girl was going to be under the codename Mindy, and then everyone found out it was Brooke, and then Brooke had to make a response video, and then they had the cancel podcast. But the cancel podcast in its first couple days looked so much different than what it does now. And also, I really do hate the new studio professional setting they're doing. I wish they would go back to like a sofa or something, just a personal opinion.
Canceled. It was originally just going to be like her podcast, and for the first episode, she had me and our friend Hunter on. And from that point forward, we never did an episode, or she never did an episode without me. So
yeah, you guys are crushing it. I mean,
well, thank you.
The tours in particular are what like is inspiring to me. I'm like, I want to go on tour. So like the fact that you guys are crushing it, it's so.
My advice: do not go on tour.
Inspiring. I don't say that lightly. Like I really, really look at what you're doing and I'm just like, she's crushing it. So you should be really proud of yourself. So again, a huge growth process that we just gassed up because it's so important. And then randomly somebody's like, hey, Brooke Schofield just said all these awful things, all these tweets about Trayvon Martin and all these things. And in your mind, you're probably seeing it thinking, I have come so far from this and now I have to like relive and like step back and defend somebody that I'm not. What were the emotions like from that perspective of knowing how far you'd come and then having to relive that?
Yeah, I think initially, of course, it was like I felt very defensive because like you said, I felt like, oh my God, like that's so far from like who I am today. But I had to like let that go a little bit because it's like, I can't expect people to have that understanding. I can't expect people to know like who I am, what I believe in now. Like when they see those things, for maybe someone who's listening, I tweeted that I was very passionate about it in the moment too. I said, Trayvon Martin was shot in self-defense by George Zimmerman. And I was tweeting that completely misinformed. It's just the wrong take, but I was so loud and confident in it in the moment on Twitter. And that's what people were so upset about.
Was there another piece of it that was also like, if he was white, we wouldn't be talking about it?
Yes, I did. I said, I don't think that this would even be a conversation if he were white.
Right.
Again, it was so one-sided. It was so misinformed and so wrong. And
How old were you when you tweeted that too?
I think 16.
Okay.
And so it was like I said, it was immediate defensiveness because I wanted to say, you guys, I was 16, but I don't like now I can look at it and I'm like, that's not an excuse. I wanted people to understand like how much had happened since then and how much I had changed since then, but I couldn't expect people to. So I had to let go of that very early on. But
yeah. Well, again, you're like, because how old are you now?
28.
So you're trying to defend somebody that was 12 years ago. Like,
yeah.
It's like, how do you even defend that? Is it necessary to defend? There's so many layers to it. I guess the question I was going to ask is like, who was the Brooke Schofield at 16? Like, walk me through your environment, your friends, even the things that were being said, because there's no wrong answer because it's not who you are now. But like, what did that environment look like?
Yeah.
Sorry, before that, I think that's an interesting conversation that he's bringing up, which is like, when the public finds something like this, and you may not have identify with that person anymore, how do you immediately respond to it all? Because you can't shut it down with saying, well, that was me years ago. But the public don't know about all of the in-between and all the growth. So how do you reflect that without sounding passive-aggressive or defensive or undermining things? Wow, okay, this is a good conversation.
16, I mean, I was in high school. I was living with my grandparents. I was, in general, just a very like insecure individual. I've kind of dealt with that like my whole life, struggled a little bit with like identity issues. So I feel like, especially at that time and even today, like I feel like validation was a major like form of currency for me. So I feel like at that time, what was most important to me is appearing to be smart, appearing to know things, like appearing a certain way versus like actually being a certain way. So I feel like that had a lot to do with like the things I was saying and how passionate I was about things I didn't know anything about. The Trayvon Martin tweet, it was my mom was very vocal about this at this time. And it was something that like we were having conversations about it. Actually, the tweets that ended up circulating are a conversation with my...
And also, I think that is incredibly easy to believe because I think even what the fuck is that? There is like the most random looking like bug I have ever seen in my entire life. What the fuck is this? Oh my god, it's like a cross between like a spider. Oh, what the fuck is that? Holy fuck. What is that? Wait, I need you to see this. Come on this. Wait. Oh my god, sorry. I'm literally just giving you my armpit. Wait. What is this? What is this? What is this? What is this? What the fuck is this? Wait, what is that? What is that? What is that? What is that? I literally just checked into this hotel. Oh, I really don't like that. 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 I'm gonna put this in the bath so I'm not doing anything morally corrupt. You can find your own way. Ooh, what the fuck is that? Girl, I literally just checked into this hotel. I really don't like that. Hold on. Let me put this bitch in the bath. Ooh, I don't like that at all. Wow. Really didn't like that. Not loving that at all. Ooh. Shiver me timbers. I apologize for the armpit. I just saw how crazy that looked. But yeah, her mother was like defending her on Twitter throughout all this, and Brooke was literally being like, shh, stop it. So
my mom.
Like you were talking on Twitter?
Yeah, she and I it was like my mom and I going back and forth and her like validating kind of what I was saying. So I think maybe there was something there where I was like, she knows things, I want to know things. But that being said, I was 16. I was old enough to have like some level of discernment and know like, maybe I don't know everything. Like maybe there's other information I should know before I'm so loudly proclaiming something like that just isn't even accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel what you're saying. I also go back and forth because it's like, I don't know, because I'm 30. Like, I'm 30, have a kid, I'm married. Like, my life is so different. And it's like, I don't know. It's hard to look at the 16-year-old version of myself and be like, I should have known.
It is. I just think it's frustrating for people, like, especially like Black people, to hear that. And like, like, I understand where that doesn't feel like an excuse. Like that, especially today, we have access to so much information that it's like at 16, you should know better, maybe. I think.
Yeah. I'll give you the Black perspective of why, like, when I would see something like that, why it would be frustrating for me. Like, growing up in Georgia at my high school, that people were super racist. Like, call it what it is. Like, say, like, white people saying the N-word in environments where they're like just racist. There's no other way to say it. There was like a picture in my mind of the person that would tweet something like that. And like, I didn't like that person. That person was mean. That person didn't like my family. Like, I had a kid in class one time raise his hand and be like, I don't agree with interracial relationships. And I was like, I'm a product of that. So you don't agree with me? So like, seeing that tweet is triggering because it's like, I can't stand the person that does that. So from the Black perspective, and it's ignorance, right? Like all these things that you very much understand now. I think that's why it's like so frustrating for Black people, because it's like, here's another person who's just like saying stuff. I guess my question to follow that up is like, what do you feel like you learned from Black people? And you may not have a perfect answer. And it's okay if your answer is, I'm still learning.
Even is such thing as a perfect answer. I think like specifically with this experience, like I feel like a lot of people think like I got canceled and that's when I found out, you know what I mean? And I don't think that's true, but specifically from like this experience, like people finding the tweets and obviously having such a like huge reaction, I got to see in real time, like how many people were being spoken over and like how much of it is still happening today. Because in my head, I was like, 12 years ago, it's a different time. And it's not that it was okay then, but it was different. But just even the people who were arguing like for me, on behalf of me, like the white people who were speaking over Black people and like people who were like rightfully upset, I got to see that happen in real time. And I was like, this is still so much an issue. Wow. If that makes sense. So
totally.
I never again will I speak on something heavy like that without having the information. And I think that's why I felt such a pressure to clarify that like I had grown up. Like I wish now, obviously, like with my apology and everything, I wish now looking at it, like I didn't emphasize so much that it was like this political thing, because I feel like that was like almost like not taking accountability at all. But it was at the time, in my opinion, like a very political issue, because the people who were defending George Zimmerman, who were wrong, by the way, it was the argument of like gun rights and self-defense and right to bear arms and like all of that. So I feel like that's why I felt like I had to say, oh, like I grew up in this super conservative family, but I think had I had all the information at the time, I would have never ever said that.
I want to like just spend a little bit more time on like what you said, like your audience defending maybe like a perspective that you don't even hold. Like, what was that, just observing? Like,
I think that's also a great point that she's brought up, which is the fact that, yeah, the canceled audience, which, you know, hugely popular within the white woman, you know, defending Brooke, and Brooke maybe not even agreeing with what they're defending her, and ultimately all they're doing is distracting.
Like people that are like ride or die for you, maybe like believing something that you don't believe.
Like, I know you say you understand like we're such different people when we were 16, but I think that was such a loud, like so many people were saying that, like, oh, she was 16, it doesn't matter. But like today, of course it matters. Like a 16-year-old should know better, and then a 16-year-old should have known better.
Sure.
I think it was just hard to see that, because a lot of people were like really like speaking about like why this was so offensive, why they were so affected by it, why it bothered them so much, and why it's so frustrating to see white creators or people like me getting away with like saying such things. And they were almost like overshadowed by like the people who were like, cancel culture is stupid, this is stupid, it's just Twitter. Yeah. And in real time, I saw it happen.
Which you did post. I mean, you did like an apology video.
I said exactly everything I shouldn't have said.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even going to say, I'm not agreeing with that statement. I'm just saying, because you posted like a pretty long video, I remember. And like, I want to talk about this. So Tana came out with a video, and you don't need to speak for Tana at all. But Tana came out with a video, was like, we are totally against this. We don't stand for that on this show, yada, yada, yada. And then you came back on like a month later. What was the feeling coming back? Did you feel guilty? Were you like, I should not be doing this? Like what, and let me preface this a little bit more. I think for the audience, it's interesting, like what that process looks like behind the scenes. So like, just what was your feeling?
I feel like, of course, I was very apprehensive. I was nervous, of course, because at this point, you know, I had such reactive responses and like emotional responses. And I had been so, you know, I like I said, I said all the wrong things and I was afraid. So I sat down again and I'm afraid. But that's my job. And I had to sit down, and I'm in a contract and I have to work. And I feel like a lot of people are frustrated that I didn't take like longer to process it all. I think to me though, it was hard for me to explain, but for everybody else, like they saw the tweets and that was the first time they had experienced that. You know what I mean? But I knew those tweets existed. I was ashamed of those tweets long before anyone brought them to my attention. You know what I mean? Like, and I'd been vocal about that. You can find on my social media today, like on my Facebook and on my Instagram, me talking about how, like, I can't believe the things that I used to believe. I can't believe that I ever played like such a part in this. And nobody thinks they're racist. Like, well, there are people who of course think they're racist, but there are a lot of people who think like, because I don't dislike Black people, because I don't feel differently about Black people, I can't be racist. And that's not true. And I feel like I had such a learning curve with that where I was like, oh, a lot of the things that I've said and done are racist, even though I know that I don't dislike Black people. So I felt like, of course, I understood why people were like, take some time, but I also was like, this is not, it didn't feel new to me. I had done all of this work prior to it.
I think, I guess that's an interesting point as well in terms of when things like this resurface, but the person who's getting called out is like aware that they do exist or maybe has addressed them before as well.
Ever being this big public thing.
And then I want to rewind a little bit. So the apology video though, because you obviously have your team, right? Were you just like, I'm doing this, I don't care what anybody says?
Yes and no. There was no talking me out of making a response video. Like a lot of people, even today, will be like, if something like that happens to you, do not respond because it makes it so much worse. And that is true because there's so many people in the same like or similar situations who never respond to anything and nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
But I was so upset and I felt so guilty and bad that I was like, there's no world where I don't make a response video. I think some of the things like, well, almost I would do it completely differently if I were to do it today. I don't think I would have not done it. But I was very, first of all, emotional, which I wish I weren't. Like, I wish I had time to sit on it and process and listen to everybody before I felt like I wanted to put something out because that initial video that I put out, so defensive. I was like, this is not me. That's not what I believe in. This was so long ago. Like, my family was concerned. Like, I felt like I was too defensive and it wasn't me taking accountability. Okay. And I regret that because had I sat on it for a second and heard what people were saying, I would have been more like receptive and of course, just I wouldn't have written it off as like.
I think again, this is like an interesting point to bring up when it comes to the concept of the public needing a reaction as soon as possible or something addressed as soon as possible. Like, if the public are seeing this and they need an opinion immediately or they need this addressed immediately, which obviously things need to be addressed as soon as possible so people know where you stand, yada, 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 we're aware of that. But does that preemptively force said person to speak on something when they haven't gathered enough thoughts yet or done the changing? You know what I mean? People always say, we need to know if you changed, but then they expect a creator to come on and say, well, I've changed, but then they don't like when they say that. Like, is there issues on both sides?
Like, oh, I didn't know better.
Yeah. Wow. It's complicated though. I can't think of one creator who's made an apology video and it's been like, dang, I actually really am happy that happened. And I don't know if you thought anything like this would happen. Like, it was like a true moment on TikTok. Because like, I knew who you were, but I didn't know who you were to the extent that I did after that situation happened. So maybe just real quick talk about just like how big it felt.
Like right before then, there was this huge moment for me on TikTok where I had...
That's what I'm saying. It's also really crazy. This came after the Alyssa Violet drama on the Cancel podcast, which was huge. Clinton Kane, huge on the podcast, huge for Brooke, and then this all dropped.
Made this series, a 13-part series about
your breakup,
an ex-boyfriend, like a breakup. And it was so big, it had like over 100 million views. And
100 million? That's crazy.
Yeah, so it was this huge moment that was already happening for me on TikTok. And this huge, I don't want to call it a power trip, but it was like all of this positive attention at once that I had that I almost didn't even know what to do with. And it was just a big moment. You know what I mean? I gained 1 million followers in a couple days.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
It was so big, and all of a sudden I had so many eyes on me that weren't necessarily on me before. So I think that's why it was so big. Because I think had it been only people who had consumed my content before or knew me or from the podcast or whatever, I think they would it would have been different. It felt really big, and TikTok in general is just, it's different than people who had been canceled before because it's short form. You can make a video in 2 seconds and it gets millions and millions of views. So yes, it felt
I felt like it was my For You page for like days where it was just like response videos. And of course, because of my background that I described to you, I was invested because I'm like, you know, as a Black person, like, I want to hear what people are saying and what the opinions are. Like, I wish more, I don't want to just say I wish more white people because it's not just white people, but I wish more people were just like, I don't have all the answers. And like, that's what gives me my strength is just like being open-minded.
Yeah. I feel like that, like there's no, it's not like now I know everything. Now I've been taught. It's like, of course you learn new things every single day and new things are going to happen every day. I think, again, people just need to be like, understand that you don't have to like dislike other races and stuff to maybe have the wrong opinion or be wrong
Good
about
point as
things.
well.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like that's in my opinion why racism still is so prevalent and stuff, because the people who are maybe like bringing it on, like are still participating, don't think that they are. They don't like, they think, oh, I like Black people, I like other races, so
Yeah.
I cannot be a part of the problem. And I think if people were a little bit more self-reflective and understood that like it's more than that, we might be able to
Make changes.
Yeah.
Well, you said something when we were DMing. You said that like you haven't really talked about this publicly like this. I mean, you have, of course, but like you haven't really been on shows. Maybe just talk about your decision to not be on shows, or conversely, like people not wanting to have you on because of the situation.
I think for a lot of people, no one wants to touch it. You know what I mean? Like it's a very touchy, dangerous topic, and like I understand where people just like wouldn't even want a part in it. For me, like on my end, I have that fear, of course. Like I want to be vocal about it because I don't want it to appear like I want it, like it's in my past and I want to get over it, because it was such a big moment for me, and it will follow me forever, and that will always be such a big part of like what has like my life, you know what I mean, my career, everything. I don't want to brush it under the rug, but I'm fearful in the way that I talk about it, because there's,
you never know, right?
Yeah, and there's certain things. Sometimes I make a point that I feel like in my heart, I'm like, oh, this is the point that I want to make, and it's misinterpreted. I don't want to say it's like twisted, but it's misunderstood. Like what I'm trying to get across is not what actually gets across, and it makes me scared, you know?
This world of creators, it's like everybody's just trying to create like this perfect little bubble. Like the fact, it's shameful that like people wouldn't want to have you on and touch this. Like it's kind of sad. One, there needs to be more Black interviewers, honestly. But it's like, why are people scared to discuss this? There's no better time in history than to sit down with somebody who dealt with this, who's changed, to like talk about it. Like there's so much power in that. And it's just frustrating that like, again, that everybody's trying to create this perfect influencer bubble. And it's like, no, let's have like an honest conversation about everything you've learned.
Yeah, I can't pretend that didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like it's like, it did happen, and I want to talk about it because I did learn so much from it. Like I'm gonna have so much anxiety, like just
you shouldn't.
The way I know. After that, there was so much. People had like an understanding of me now where it's like, oh, she's a hateful person. She hates Black people. She is like, just a disgusting person. So every single thing I said moving forward
was scrutinized.
Yeah, and that's not to say I didn't deserve it. I'm not the victim in this at all. It's not that. It's just like at some point I needed a second to like really like sit and mentally get a little bit better, because at the time it affected me, of course, a lot.
Again, I think a great point of when you're under the public attacking you for something, it's probably not the greatest time for you to make a proper, well-thought response to it, Because it's
so moving forward,
overwhelming.
The Brooke now, right? Because you're doing all these cool things. Obviously, not just with this situation, but in life, you've overcome a lot. And again, you should be really proud of everything you've dealt with and who you are today. When you look at the version of yourself that's the best Brooke in like 5 to 10 years, what does that look like? What are you doing?
I think something like really important to me right now, and Tana and I talk about this a lot, is like veering away or like moving past our content and our online presence being so much about other people. I think that's something I'm definitely trying to focus on now, especially like being on the other side of it and feeling misunderstood.
Which again is a reason that they're ending cancelled.
And feeling like I have all these people talking about me and things like without all the information. And I do that to other people. We have done that to other people. That's been like the basis of our podcast all this time. You know what I mean? We comment on things that obviously we don't have all the information about. And so much of like my big moments have been about other people, about guys or old friends or whatever it is. So I feel like in 5, 10 years, I want my presence and everything like to be either centered around me or centered around something else, like not drama or tea or people.
Yeah. Drama sells though. And that's the challenge for so many creators is like, just almost like creating drama, truly.
Yeah. And that's not to say there's moments where I'm like, I have to give an opinion on this, like.
I think as well, there's like a happy medium in the middle of this where there's like drama being your entire thing versus like being a real person and commenting on things. You know what I mean? It is the fundamental reason that most podcasts are about talking about pop culture or politics, or if you want to call it drama, or talking about your ex relationships or your ex friends or whatever. Because in life, we deal with, if you want to say, drama. That is what happens. You deal with fighting with friends. You deal with fighting with coworkers. You deal with drama at work. Like, you deal with being pissed. You deal with being happy. Like, the world is literally, that is how we operate as people. And I think there's a level of honesty as well in acknowledging that and not acting like you're above it or you're perfect, but you can definitely find a happy medium.
Like,
Yeah,
big,
like
big cheater, I'm talking about that.
Well, you just talked about where you want to be in 5 to 10 years. But right now, you're about to go on tour. You've done tours. You're going international. By the way, for your tour, if you guys need like if you need me to come to Europe, I'll come to Europe. Like, why not?
We would love it.
Just dive into that.
Yeah, so it's been the past like full 2 years that Tana and I have been touring. We did a full US tour. I think it was like almost 80 shows. And then
That's wild.
we just came home last week from our European tour. So that was like, we did, I think like 13 countries over there. And now we have Australia in a month. It's
Oh my God.
it's so special and it's so cool. And it's very like, it feels different because I'm sure you experience this too as just an influencer in general, but it's hard to understand like the number that you see because a number is a number. And when you physically see all of those people like show up, it feels so different.
What's the biggest show you've ever done?
Our biggest show was LA. We did 2 shows at the Dolby. So I think that was our biggest show. It was 5,000 people. We did 2, but second one wasn't sold out. Let me not.
But still, 5,000 people there to just hear you chat.
It was amazing. And, so much of that is like Tana has built this insane following and she has such a like loyal and amazing audience because of how raw and everything she's been for so many years. And she's the bulk of that. Let me tell you that much. But I'm so grateful to be a part of it and that she's let me be such a big part of it. And it's been very amazing.
It's got to be crazy. I mean, like,
I think as well, I also wonder, what Brooke and Tana's dynamic is because what she's saying there where she's like, the bulk of that is from Tana and whatever like that. I wonder if there's like a little bit, like she said earlier, about imposter syndrome that maybe Brooke doesn't want to renew the Cancel podcast so she can, find a self-identity that she deems she brings the same amount to the board. And again, I'm not saying that shady way. I'm literally saying she just said like Tana's bringing all that in. Maybe that's why on her standing she doesn't want to renew
I remember when I was in the NFL, we'd go to we played in London one time, and I just remember having the feeling of like, this is like a dream. Like I'm in the NFL, we bounce around from city to city, play in front of 100,000 people, and it's crazy. And you're doing that. Is that just like every time you're on stage, like wow?
Yes, every single time we go out there, it's so. I don't know. I can't describe the feeling to somebody, but especially overseas because in America, it's like,
wow, I wish my experience with my touring company wasn't so fucking shitty so that I could actually enjoy touring because I'm hearing great things from everyone else.
You not that you expect it, but it's like.
I will be talking about that soon, by the way. I just have to finish my contract first.
These girls are just like us. It makes sense, but it's so crazy. We did a show in like Berlin. So no one even speaks English hardly.
That's crazy.
And it's so amazing. And people are flying in from other countries and it is great. It's a feeling you could literally never describe to somebody.
Yeah,
it's very,
it's
very
crazy.
special.
All right, I'll ask you a couple of these questions and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so now you talked about your parents a ton and like the ups and downs that you had with your parents. And before I ask these questions, there's a couple questions from the audience. So again, talked about your parents, your relationship, the ups and downs. Now, what is your relationship like with your parents?
I do talk about this actually a little bit on Canceled. My mom especially, I go back and forth a little bit. We've gone, 6 months, a year at a time with just no contact at all. And then I'll give in and I'll have like a whole cycle over again. Right now I have a relationship with my mom, maybe not a good one, but we speak here and there and I try to support her however I can.
Yeah, it's challenging.
It is. And it's a very like touchy thing just because, I don't know if you have any experience with addicts, but it's like you want to support them, but sometimes like there's like a fear there of like, am I enabling? Am I... Yeah.
I have experience with addicts, but not drugs. Like people are addicts in a lot of different ways. And I understand what you're saying, but not to that extent. That's like another level of addiction that's really challenging. Okay. This will be the last question. Would you change anything about the ways you've maneuvered challenges? Like you've been through a number of challenges in your life, both with social media and personally in life. What would be like the advice kind of that you'd give yourself on how to go about it?
I don't know if I would change it. I should say like, yes, of course I would change it because there's so many things maybe I've done wrong along the way. But I definitely am somebody who's like, maybe that was supposed to happen. Like obviously there's a lesson to be learned here. Like I think I'll end up exactly where I was supposed to end up because of how I handled certain situations, whether I was wrong or not.
Yeah.
Which I was wrong.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to say, I see in the description it says here, this conversation is about defending the past. It's about owning it, learning from it, and pushing forward with humility, right? And wow, first of all, I was not expecting this from Brooke, and this is my first time seeing Isaac. I think it's also important to note that Brooke agreed to have this conversation like a year or so after this all came up. which to me shows a level of still wanting to talk about it, which I think is really important for growth and accountability. Obviously with those tweets, I'm the last person that needs to make any comment on anything, but I think as someone who covers situations like this, we ask people for accountability and for change, and I think being able to have conversations or want to have conversations is an incredible start in that. Wow, shout out to Isaac as well and his team. This was really, really, really well done, and I was not expecting this. I will link it all down below as well. I hope you're all doing great. I will see you in my next one, and it's hot as balls in New York right now, so I'm sweating at 1 a.m. Goodbye.